super fun, and all about artisan cheese and more to melt your peaceful heart and toast your peaceful life. Coming to you from the Appalachian Mountains of southwestern Virginia, this is the Peaceful Heart FarmCast.
Hey, this is Scott Hall from Peaceful Heart Farm, and you are listening to the Peaceful Heart FarmCast.
Hello, everybody. Melanie Hall here. Hope you are doing very well. The conversation today and every day revolves around the value of tradition, traditional homestead living, traditional raw milk products, and artisan cheese. Topics discussed here are designed to create new perspectives and possibilities for how you might add the taste of tradition to your life. Pecking Order and Quail are in the news again today. There's always something new with these little guys. I have so much fun with them. They're very entertaining. However, quail and all birds and fowl have a dark side. The pecking order occurs in many species of animal. It's done to establish the dominant animal and then the next most dominant and the next, all the way down to the low man on the totem pole. However, the very words pecking order have to do with birds pecking each other to establish dominance. Not only the quail, but the cow pecking orders in the podcast today, and I'll talk about a couple of others. Not everybody really has a pecking order or an obvious pecking order, but the birds are the worst. They are the most vicious with it. Before I get into all of that, I want to take a minute and say welcome to all the new listeners. Thank you for joining me, and a hearty welcome back to the veteran homestead-loving regulars. Thank you for stopping by the FarmCast for every episode. I appreciate you all so much. Let's get to it. Just a brief bit about the garden. The garden's done, actually. I still have some perennial herbs going strong out there, but everything else is done. We need to do lots of cleanup of old dead plants, and the ground cover we use to keep the weeds down will remain in place through the winter. Yes, weeds will survive through the winter and even grow if they're not kept in check. So then after the garden cleanup, then the next details on the garden are going to be talking about what we plan for next year, because we're done for this year. Now let me talk about the creamery. Scott has made so much progress with the creamery. All of the open cracks between the blocks have been filled. Additionally, he put that beautiful finish on the concrete blocks. As I mentioned in a previous podcast, it looks a bit like stucco now. And that took a lot of extra time and effort. Scott is really good at working on these small touches to add beauty to the building. I say small touches. The idea is small, but the work to make it happen was large, really large. And today is Scott's out there making final measurements for roofing materials. He also has a list of odds and ends kinds of tasks to get the building in tip-top shape, and he's making a little parking area and just lots and lots of stuff that he has on his to-do list. And a week or so ago, he moved all of the winter hay under the roof of the loafing area. And that's going to save some money on hay. He said that has been a goal for him for a while. He got it done just before the latest remnant of a hurricane came through and dropped another 3 inches or so of rain on us. All right. Let's talk about the animals. Animal husbandry. Let's start with the donkeys. The donkeys are getting ready for their hoof trimming appointment. I was talking with Scott about this just this morning. He let me know that in the previous podcast, I'd said that Johnny was getting better about standing still for his trimming, and Scott didn't see that that was a true statement. According to him, Johnny is just as stubborn today as he has been since the first day he arrived on the homestead. Then he told me a story about a neighbor and friend who has a couple of donkeys, and he talked about his hoof trimming story, and that made Scott's dealings with Johnny look like a walk in the park. It seems like there is always someone somewhere who has a bigger problem, and these stories can help with perspective on our perceived challenges. Now, I'll put in a little bit about pecking order for all of the animals, and Daisy's definitely the matriarch ruler of the donkeys, and I don't really know an order beyond that, and she's not real aggressive with it. And actually, they tend to hang out in pairs. Daisy and Coco are one pair, and Johnny and Sweet Pea are the other pair. And they are in separate pastures right now, so they have no choice but to pair that way. However, when they're together, they still pair up that way. And I think Sweet Pea rules in the Sweet Pea Johnny pairing. Now the sheep, there are still 2 flocks of sheep, but now configured differently. A small flock of 5 was originally all boys. Now the small flock of 5 is 1 boy, Lambert, and his 4 female companions. So the other 4 boys are with the rest of last year's lambs and a couple of other ewes that we decided not to breed this year. So those other 4 males were this year's lambs. There are 12 members in that flock. Now all are doing really well, no issues. The sheep have been the easiest of our animals for quite some time now. I don't know if we have worked out most of the kinks or they are just easier to deal with in general. Now, pecking order in sheep is much harder to see, and perhaps they are one of the few animals that really do not have one. Sheep hang together as a group. They hang together better than any of the other animals. They instinctively know that there is power in their numbers together. If a coyote can get one animal separate, that animal is a goner. So the sheep really huddle together even while they're grazing. The only time I see them jockeying for position is when we have them huddled together. They'll butt heads and push each other a little bit there. But watching them move in the field, you can see who the leaders are, the ones that everyone else follows, but there's no really pushing each other around to establish a dominance. Again, they tend to stick very close together. One will lead and the rest will follow, like sheep. Now the goats are the next easiest animals to deal with on our homestead. We have the internal parasites under control. There's really only one real issue with them, and that is their hooves needing to be trimmed. They tend to become lame from time to time, and I've said it before, we are going to gradually phase out our current herd of cashmere goats and replace them with a hardier meat breed, one that is known for low parasite loads and low hoof maintenance. Right? Because that hoof maintenance is still the one thing that's an issue with our goats. So Kiko goats and Spanish goats are the breeds we're considering. Both of these breeds have closer ties to their original wild state than some of the most popular breeds of goats, which have been bred to bring out specific characteristics, usually either meat or milk. And just like breeding any animal, as you make your genetic choices, some things improve. But then others will get worse. Animals living in the wild are always going to be hardier. Without humans making genetic selections, wild species develop characteristics around one goal. The goal is to survive. In the case of goats, wild species, they don't have humans there to trim their hooves and treat internal parasites. They must evolve to be resilient, resourceful, and efficient in their genetics. Now, among the goat girls, I don't see much pecking order. If pressed, they will huddle together like sheep. However, if they feel threatened, one or more of them will actually break away from the herd in different directions. I think they rely on their speed and agility to get away from predators. Coyotes hunt in packs and work best when they separate one animal from the rest and then surround it. But the goats are fast enough to get away, I think. Anyway, one or more of them will break away, as I said. Then the rest of the herd kind of scatters and then they'll bunch back up. Goats are significantly harder to herd than sheep if they get excited. And if you keep them calm and gently move them a little at a time, they're not so hard to move. But once one gets excited and breaks away, then the others will just break in all directions. Now, so I think that the goat girls have a much subtler pecking order. If we were working them closely like we do the cows, we might see it more, like if we were milking our goats. But I don't really see much of a pecking order there, though they do butt heads quite a bit. And we don't have goat boys anymore. None. We're 0. Well, actually, there's one. We do have one out there, now that I think about it. But anyway, he can't breed. But anyway, with the breeders that we had, there was definitely a pecking order there. We used to have 4 bucks, and Appomattox was king, and Roanoke was prince, and everybody else was down from there. And sometimes I miss the boys. They were all so regal with their long curled horns. But anyway, they're gone. We still got the girls. Not much pecking order there. Now, moving on to the cows, let's talk about the calves first. The calves are completely weaned from milk, and they're out there grazing on grass full time now. And the preg checks on the girls are done, and we have 5 or 6 that are pregnant. The calves will eventually go in with, as soon as we dry up the girls, the calves will go in with them. As soon as we know they can't nurse anymore, we'll put the calves in with the big girls. Now, as far as the preg checks, it is as we expected. Buttercup is not pregnant. We were pretty sure that was the case, but it's nice to know for sure. Our newest heifer, Rosie, is pregnant. She was bred at a very young age, so I got some really good advice from the vet while she was here about how to help her through the pregnancy and birthing process. And the central bit of advice is that she needs to grow. So Rosie will get extra feed all winter. She was getting just a taste to get her trained to put her head in the milking stanchion. However, the vet recommended she gets lots of extra feed with at least 14% protein, as much as she wants without getting fat. We don't want her to get fat because that would complicate the birth as well, but she needs to grow. She needs to get bigger. And the extra feed will help her with that. We give her the best feed available. It's non-soy, non-GMO, organic dairy feed, and it's 15% protein. So we think that's going to help her out a lot. Now, Scott and I had this long discussion on how actually are we going to feed Rosie while not feeding the rest of the herd, because they're going to go way out to the back. And so taking feed all the way out there every day, not really practical. So we are grass-fed operation for the most part, and the big girls get a little supplement while they're producing milk, but other than that, it's grass year-round with a supplemental hay in the winter. That's it. So they're out there in those back fields grazing pretty much all the way through the winter. And in order to get Rosie the extra feed that she needs, she's going to have a separate pasture area. And we need to keep her close to be able to get feed to her efficiently. Now, who do we want to put in with her as a companion? The calves are too small, and she's already shown that she's going to bully them. So we can't put Rosie in with the calves. And the calves, again, they're going to get merged into the big girl herd as soon as those big girls stop producing milk. So moving the calves out, though, is going to free up that pasture area. It's close. We can easily keep an eye on Rosie. So then it's like, well, should we put the 2 jerseys together? But Butter is high on the pecking order, or higher, much higher than Rosie. Rosie's low man on the totem pole, being the youngest and the latest addition to the herd. So Rosie's not going to bully Butter. But could Butter be the one to be her companion? Nah. Butter would simply bowl her over and grab her feed. So after some little discussion, we decided that Buttercup is the perfect choice as companion for Rosie. Unlike Butter, who will bowl over anyone who gets between her and any kind of feed, Buttercup is the opposite and pretty ambivalent towards anything but grass. Oh, she'll eat her supplements, but she's not eager. Rosie will get her feed, and Buttercup will just keep grazing and may not even notice, hopefully. Any of the other cows would immediately come up and start competing for that feed. Hopefully it will work out as we have envisioned it. If not, we will come up with another plan. Now, one other note on pecking order amongst the cows. Once the calves get added to the main herd, Rosie will no longer be low man, at least until the calves are full grown. If Virginia and Luna get bigger than Rosie, and they will, Rosie may end up back at the bottom again. We shall see. Because Butter's smaller than Violet, and she's also a fairly recent addition to the herd, but I'm pretty sure Violet is only one step higher than Rosie. Butter pushes Violet around at will. So I think Butter has the advantage over Violet. And Violet's just one step above Rosie. So Rosie's at the bottom, then Violet, then Butter. Then Buttercup, Cloud, Claire. Claire's always going to be the matriarch, and Buttercup right behind her, or maybe Cloud. Those 2 are close in dominance. Violet, Butter, Rosie, way down the line. I don't know all of their criteria or for order of dominance, but it's quite educational to watch it all happen. Now, as far as milking, we have 3 more days of milking and then we are done for this year. There's always a sigh of relief as the final day of milking is complete. The constant, everyday, no breaks schedule of milking is not for the faint of heart. Some people do it year round, twice a day, every day, 365 days a year. That's not for us. We love our cows, we love our milk and dairy products, but we don't love it so much that we give up our entire lives for it. Nope. We have a plan for making a living and milking seasonally using that model. And maybe sometime in the far future, we'll sell our little dairy and someone else will come in and want to milk a larger herd of cows every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And they'll have the setup to do that as well. We have created a creamery with lots of flexibility to scale up as needed. We could scale it up if the need arose. But right now, the business plan is seasonal milking. We have 3 more days of milking and then we are done for this year. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been freezing skim milk. Scott drinks it after we run out of fresh whole milk, and I now have enough to see him through the winter in the freezer. The final 6 gallons went into the freezer this morning. And it's skim milk because whole milk does not freeze well. The cream separates, and when you thaw it, it gets lumpy. It doesn't incorporate back into the milk very well. I've heard stories of people making it work by thawing it slowly, but I've never really been able to do that, even though I always thaw it slowly. It's in the refrigerator. It takes it days to thaw out. So even, thawing it very slowly, shaking it up a lot, the cream is just changed by the freezing process, and there is no going back as far as I can tell. Now, I'm still making yogurt for a few more days, at least. There are 7 quarts in each batch that I make in my kosori, and I store it in pint containers, so that makes 14 pint containers every time that I do a batch, and they have very tight lids. But this yogurt is an experiment to see how long it'll last in the refrigerator. I'm making enough for 3 or 4 months. Will it be edible 3 or 4 months from now? I don't know. Scott eats yogurt every day. He'll eat like a pint of that yogurt every day, at least, sometimes more. So we'll keep you up to date on that as we progress through the winter. In the end, we will know exactly how long we can keep yogurt, and that's useful information. Now let me finish up with the quail. The quail and their pecking order. I don't know if there's another animal that is as vicious as birds when it comes to pecking order. I think that's why it's named Pecking Order. Sure, they're cute and they're fun to watch, but turn your back and the next thing you know, they're pecking so much they actually injure one another. And we just had that scenario recently. There's only one white bird among all the other shades of brown birds. And a little over a week ago, she got injured and her head was bleeding just a bit. And the next day I went out there and the other birds had severely injured her, literally scalping her. Once they had the taste of blood in their mouth, they just kept going and going. I quickly got her out of there and into private lodging, and she's healing up, but it's going to take a long time, especially when there was quite a setback. One of the other birds was obviously in distress with mites, and so I had pulled her out separate as well. So we were cleaning out all of the cages and disinfecting them, treating the birds in the cages for parasites. It's good to do that a couple times a year anyway, just to clean everything out, get it nice and clean, and then put the birds back in there. So we moved all of the birds out of the cages and into the various plastic boxes we use as brooders for young birds. We have just enough of those boxes that we can put all 5 sets of birds in them. We have 2 large ones that we put the 2 batches on the top where there are 12 birds on each side. And then we have 3 smaller boxes for the breeding birds on the bottom where there's just 6 in each of those groups. So we moved all the birds out of the cages and into these plastic boxes, and then I put the white one back in with her original group just to see how it would go, because it wasn't going to be very long. Even that was not a good idea. After only a couple of hours, she was bloodied again. So naturally, she's back in her private domain once again. Anyway, and the other bird that was showing signs of parasite infestation she was removed from her group as well, as I said, and it was a few days before we got the permethrin we needed to treat the birds in the cages. So I moved her away from the others, and while cleaning the cages, we put her back in with her former cage companions. Same couple of hours, and she had a small bit of blood on top of her beak, and I decided immediately that she needed to be separated until that healed. The blood is just too tempting for these guys. They are vicious. And remember that even though you can buy chickens in the grocery store that say vegetarian fed, birds are not vegetarians. They are very carnivorous. Well, they'll eat veggies as well, but they prefer high protein meat. You will recall the stories of the early bird getting the worm while you were growing up. And that's a story meant to teach promptness to children. However, it also illustrates that birds like worms. They also like bugs. Birds are not vegetarian. Anyway, I really love my quail. They are a joy to watch. But they're still animals. They exhibit animalistic tendencies. Make no mistake, they have a pecking order and only the strong survive. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep my one white hen. She may be too different from the others. You know, a lot of times in the animal kingdom that, you know, when you have albinos or that they just the rest of the like pack of wolves or whatever, they'll run them off because they don't like that oddness. She may be low man on the totem pole because of her color. I don't know. I'll make the effort to get her healed and back with her group, but if it happens again, I'll have to make a different choice for her. It would be cruel to continue to let her be pecked so badly. Sometimes the only choices are tough ones. Well, that's it for today's Peaceful Heart FarmCast. As usual, there's a lot going on at the homestead. Always something new, something different. Life is filled with wonder and awe at nature and God's creation. And the hierarchy of the animal kingdom is alive and well. It has worked for thousands of years to bring us and our animal friends to this point in time. We fully expect the pecking order to ensure that life continues to the end of time. And sometimes it's ugly, just as our lives can be tough. But we all do the best we can with what we have. We cry and pray and hope to live to see another day. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hop over to Apple Podcasts or whatever podcasting service that you use. Subscribe, give me a 5-star rating, a review. And if you like this content and want to help out the show, the absolute best way you can do that is to share it with any friends or family who might be interested in this type of content. Share, share, share on all your social media. Let them know about the Peaceful Heart FarmCast. Thank you so much for stopping by the homestead. And until next time, may God fill your life with grace and peace.